Thank you, Ambassador Chinoy. As you rightly pointed out, it's a great pleasure to be interacting with the youth, particularly those who are in the universities. And this is really a very, very good initiative on the part of the organization called Diplomats Lab. I was very enthused by the fact because I've always felt that the young do not really get informed about national and international security issues. And insofar as maritime security in the Indo-Pacific is concerned, it takes prime importance insofar as India is concerned. So looking at the audience, the youngsters, I have deliberately devised a PowerPoint presentation so that pictorially they'll be able to understand the maritime domain. You know, that man is primarily a continental creature, and that applies more to Indians than anybody else. And except for those who are really involved with the sea, people tend to set aside what happens in the seas around us, whereas they are most important insofar as economic transaction, global economic engagement, and India's engagement with the rest of the world is concerned. So before I start about the changing paradigm of India's maritime security, the topic that has been given to me, I thought, let me introduce to the audience, the participants, what really is involved insofar as India is concerned in the seas around, the ocean around it is concerned. So here we go. First of all, this is the Indian Peninsula, which is most important insofar as India's economy is concerned, insofar as geostrategic location of India is concerned. So we get a lot of vows from across the world to say, my God, this country has got a land border running into 15,000 kilometers. What an impressive figure.
Pardon me for interrupting, Admiral. Are you showing a PowerPoint presentation?
That's right. Are you able to see my slides?
No, not yet. I think you need to share it, and the webmaster needs to.
I'm so sorry. I
permit you to share it.
I pressed the share screen. I'll do it again.
Yes, please do that.
Are you able to see it now?
Yes, you just started your screen sharing and I think it's popped up.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
So I was saying that before I go on to the subject proper, let me show to the young participants pictorially what is really involved insofar as maritime security of India is concerned. So the world around us gives a vow whenever they hear the fact that there is a long subcontinental border that India shares with some countries, which is 15,000 kilometers long. Now, this impressive figure of 15,000 kilometers, no good to man or beast except for the 3 friendly countries marked by green. Even there, the total economic transaction insofar as trade is concerned is minuscule. Primarily because, and why is it no good to man or beast, is because, first of all, terrain does not permit across the northern borders any economic transaction. And secondly, contemporary history tells you that insofar as Pakistan and China are concerned, even if we had good roads and rail connectivity, nothing would have gone through because such is the nature of these 2 neighbors. So for all practical purposes, we might as well, because of the peninsular nature, which is a God-given gift to us, call ourselves an island nation, because 97% by volume and 77% by weight of all trade takes place only through the sea. And therefore, you might also like to know an interesting fact that of the 6 largest peninsulas of the world, we happen to be the second at 2.07 million square kilometers insofar as the peninsular area is concerned. The largest one is 3.2 million square kilometers of the Arabian Peninsula, which is composed of 10 countries, including landlocked Jordan. And the smallest one is at 0.58 million square kilometers, the Iberian Peninsula. So you can see the strength of the maritime asset that India possesses. That gives you, that large peninsula gives you 200 plus ports with which to carry out global economic engagement, which constitutes between 37 and 43% of our current account. And that is because it varies depending on the cost of oil. Now, since we are talking about the Indo-Pacific and everything to do with today's theme is Indo-Pacific, I thought I will clarify that insofar as the Indo-Pacific is concerned, there are many definitions by people. Oh, it's an economic construct, it is a geostrategic construct, it is only a geographic construct. The Indo-Pacific, being absolutely practical, is geographic and therefore geostrategic. It runs from the east coast of Africa to the west coast of the Americas. What are India's assets in this Indo-Pacific maritime domain? To start with, Indian investments in 46 hydrocarbon projects and across 24 countries, including 39 in coastal states, are spread, particularly hydrocarbon projects, are spread across the Indo-Pacific. India has the second largest diaspora with which we are blessed, as you know. We superseded China a couple of years ago, and today, as per World Bank figures, received the largest repatriation. In 2019, it was $80 billion, and this year, already that figure seems to have succeeded, as seems to have been superseded, mainly because of layoffs, etc., in the Gulf. And we hope that COVID passes quickly and think people will start getting their jobs back. Now, this ocean, despite being the smallest of the three, the Pacific, Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean, is unique in a bad way. It has a roof over its head, which is not a good thing for a water body. And that I say because the only access and entry points, exit points in this ocean are through 9 choke points. Choke points are navigational constrictions and are not really good insofar as geostrategy is concerned because they give rise to easy transnational crime. Now, these are the choke points, starting from the Cape of Good Hope, which is a half choke point, Mozambique Channel, Bab el Mandab, where all the piracy took place from 2006 to 12, Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, from where 40% of global oil and gas come out, the Malacca, Sunda, and the Lombok Straits. So that is the environment in which India stands right in the center. Its peninsular pinnacle juts out 1,000 nautical miles into the Indian Ocean. Looking at this picture of the choke points, it is important to look at the lifeblood of the world, of the global economy, and that is oil and gas for the immediate future. Now, almost 40% of oil and gas on a daily basis passes through these choke points. 17.2 million barrels a day come out of the Suez Canal through the Strait of Hormuz, coming out of the Persian Gulf. 4 million barrels come out of the Suez Canal or go into the Suez Canal, 3.5 through the Strait of Bab el Mandab or the Gulf of Aden, and 15.4 through the Malacca or the Lombok Straits. Now, if maths doesn't really add up, it is primarily because a large amount of oil comes from countries like Angola, from the west coast of Africa, from where we've also started buying, but China buys in large VLCCs. In this region, which has been the crux and the crucible of maritime terrorism, as you know, USS Cole was hit in the year 2000, 1 year before 9/11. A lot of people feel that all this started after 9/11. And this happened because Al-Qaeda in Arabian Peninsula, centered as it was in Pakistan, carried out this kind of an attack and became the norm thereafter. MV Limburg had a similar strike by AQAP in the year 2002, just off Aden Harbor. The first ship was inside Aden Harbor. This is our home, the business district of India. And you are all aware that the Taj Hotel and the Oberoi Hotel and the VT Terminus and one hospital was struck by terrorists who came from the sea. In 2013, a Chinese container vessel was struck by missiles coming out of the Sinai Peninsula, hit by terrorists who claimed thereafter that they tried to destroy the ship, not knowing that it was a Chinese ship. Very fortunately, the missile struck only the superstructure and nobody got injured. But you imagine in the Suez Canal, if a ship had got stranded or had sunk, for a year plus salvage wouldn't have been possible. And that would have meant everybody coming around the Cape of Good Hope. Now, these are our waters. Then the tanker attacks which took place in June 2019 in the Strait of Hormuz, you're all aware of the consequences and the aftermath of these incidents insofar as presence of major powers. Even Indian Navy started deploying itself in order to protect our oil-carrying vessels. Drone attacks in Saudi Arabia, even though they took place from the air, they affected very badly oil production from Saudi Arabia. But fortunately, within 2 weeks, because only one terminal was hit, it was restored. Drugs and the nexus between drug and gun running within the Indian Ocean is the largest insofar as transnational crime is concerned in our maritime domain as a transnational crime. Piracy in the Gulf of Aden, which I touched upon briefly, took place between 2006 and 2012 in the Strait of Bab el-Mandab, but expanded as close as 100 nautical miles from the Indian coast. And therefore, it was our responsibility to look after maritime security of international shipping. That's a picture, which is a 24-hour grab in the year 2012 from what is now called IMAC. At that time, it was a prototype configuration. The Information Management Analysis Center based in Gurgaon, where we've called a lot of friendly countries to now position their liaison officers. You can see about 1,500 kilometer swath to the west and the east. And there are about 40,000 vessels, including fishing vessels from India, which have been grabbed in a 24-hour period along the west coast of India. And see, because of the threat of piracy in 2012, how close they came to the Indian peninsula. It never used to be the case. Then we must look at Chinese forays into the Indian Ocean, which actually started with this Yuan class, eavesdropping electronic intelligence gathering ships, which started coming in 2005. And when we asked the Chinese, even in our conferences, they said, oh, these are supposed to be actually tracking our satellites. But we knew what they were meant to be doing, and you would be able to assess what they're doing. One of the God-sent opportunities that China received was in 2008 when it got embarrassed because of piracy attacks on its merchant ships. One of those attacks was thwarted by an Indian warship and its helicopter, but the second one came as a great embarrassment to them. And ever since then, the Chinese have positioned 3 ships all the time. One of them is a tanker in the Gulf of Aden to protect its own shipping. We have positioned 1 ship. So have many other countries, major countries, including Japan. But the Chinese took that as an excuse and started creating a base in Djibouti, which you know now is a proper military maritime overseas base. That's a group of Chinese ships in the Gulf of Aden. Then they sent for the first time a nuclear-powered SSN, which is an attack submarine, on an Indian Ocean region trip. And they announced it, unlike anything that we ever saw in the history of nuclear-powered vessels, particularly submarines, since the Cold War. And they deliberately announced it, that it will be on a visit underwater in the Indian Ocean region in order to support and look at piracy incidents. They also have been sending, since 2014, their surface warships through the Sunda and back through the Lombok Strait in order to and come close to Australian possessed islands like the Christmas Island. The Fedu Finolu Island was acquired by a Chinese tourism company from the Maldives for a cost of just $4.7 million on a lease of 50 years, which has been actually less than peanuts. And the purpose, as we knew, and we warned the Maldives at that time, is coming true now. They have already reclaimed a large part of land. They may not be able to build an airstrip because of the new political dispensation, which is very careful, but other things have already been built. Now, this is a picture that I wanted to show of Vietnam, where the Chinese, within the 9-dash line, came inside the EEZ of Vietnam. This is important because they have been trying to threaten our JV, the joint venture with the Vietnamese oil companies. And we have said, sorry, we are in the EEZ of Vietnam. So this is also part of maritime security and what has been happening over the last, I'll just finish in a minute. Now, I mentioned about Djibouti. They are also likely to position, this is the base that they built between 2015 and 2017 in Djibouti. And the other base that is likely to come up is in Gwadar. There are already very clear indications that it is not part of CPEC alone. The PLA Navy is going to have a base either there or in Jiwani next door. OBOR, as you all know, is a web of maritime infrastructure, primarily based as a web as forecast by that think tank, by the consultant, defense consultant in America, that it is a string of pearls that they are vibing around. The whole game on the part of the Chinese is the acquisition of influence, which they were succeeding, but now there are indications that the east coast of Africa is not too happy. What is the remedy insofar as India is concerned? Geostrategy. Just as Ambassador Chinoy rightly said, we have been forgetting about the strength that we possess in the Andaman Nicobar Islands. All this while, we've been thinking of it as a strategic burden to look after islands which are 800 nautical miles away from mainland. But imagine, this provides us great strategic depth. 800 nautical miles, and if the compass is drawn by the same radius further away because of naval assets, it gives you 1,500 kilometers even with short range maritime surveillance aircraft and ships, etc., into Southeast Asia. And that's what Southeast Asian countries have been looking forward to. It also provides us, the Andaman Nicobar Islands, strategic leverage because we are sitting 80 miles from the mouth of the Malacca Strait. And that, you would understand, is an obvious statement. So what do we need to do? Put ships, aircraft, and submarines in sufficient but not large numbers in the Andaman Nicobar Islands to show our presence and to keep check on anybody who casts an evil eye on India. And that will be a great amount of succor to the littorals fighting in the South China Sea. Another point is India's credo, Sagar, which was announced by Prime Minister Modi in March of 2015 from Mauritius. And we've been doing a lot of capacity building and capability enhancement amongst the lesser haves, particularly island developing states. The Prime Minister also at that time had announced that, look, we already have a trilateral security mechanism between Sri Lanka, Maldives, and us. Other island nations are welcome to join. And he hinted at Seychelles and Mauritius. Some things are moving. I would say that we should ask even Comoros, Madagascar, and many other littorals who are on mainland Africa, who are lesser haves, to join up in a league of maritime cooperation with India. We need maritime domain awareness for everybody. We are already doing EZ surveillance for Seychelles and Mauritius. For many years, we have white shipping agreements with many countries, including Australia, Singapore, and another 24 countries. And we have started setting up coastal surveillance radar systems, or CRSS, in Sri Lanka, in Maldives. They're already full. Now they are being established by Bharat Electronics Limited and Indian Navy's support in Mauritius and Seychelles. That will give us an eye for these countries to enable themselves to look at their own EZ and also share information with us. What is the way forward? No need to match China because we haven't got that depth of our economy, nor can we afford. But aggressive pursuit of Sagar and Quad, which will be discussed now by other speakers, cooperation through capacity building and capability enhancement, mentor IOR littorals against checkbook diplomacy by China, and build up defenses, allocate funding despite COVID. Thank you very much. I am so sorry I have taken 2 minutes extra.